The young James Joyce was about 1901, whenever he started collecting what he thought was going to be a bunch of lyrics which might eventually make them way into a sequence. And that sequence is something that he began to work on between 1901 and 1904 or so, between the ages of 19 and 22. He was a brilliant young student, University College Dublin as we know it now, or the Catholic University as it was known in those days as well, in the centre of Dublin. A brilliant student and hanging around with a brilliant and sometimes rather scurrilous bunch of friends. That bunch of friends and all that kind of student scene is famously recreated in Ulysses, in the early episodes, in the Sandy Cove, and then eventually in the drinking session which takes place in the maternity hospital and which ends up in the brothels of Nighttown in the Circe episode of Ulysses. So this is the kind of the background of this kind of young, kind of fast set that the young Joyce was hanging around with, but at the same time he was a solitary and exceedingly knowledgeable and exceedingly well-read young man. So he felt at this particular point in time that he was going to be a poet. His brother Stanislaus, with whom he used to hang around with and used to go on these various drinking sessions with, also thought so, as did his good friend Oliver St. John Gogarty, who ended up living with in 1904 in that famous Martello Tower in Sandy Cove. So Joyce was working on these lyrics with a number of models in mind, and those models were the models that he took from his reading. And the main model for any kind of lyric sequence in the English language is Shakespeare's sonnets. And Shakespeare's sonnets tells the story of a love affair between the poet and a dark lady, but another love affair between the poet and a young man, and indeed something else going on in the background, which would have been the marriage of the poet and his wife Anne Hathaway. So these stories were all interwoven within a lyric sequence, and Joyce thought that he was going to try to construct a similar kind of lyric sequence which told a similar kind of story, which connected itself with the great sonnet sequences like Shakespeare's sonnets and the other Renaissance sonnets, and going back to the sonnet sequences of Boccaccio and Petrarch and in that great tradition.